Nice, I like that. That's awesome. I found a new trick today. Today is a rainy, overcast, nasty day. And then sometimes it's a really sunny day. I'm Steve, and I am living for a living. What we're gonna do today is get an inverter plugged in. An inverter takes DC power from your battery and makes it AC power to run most of the stuff in your RV. And by most of the stuff, I mean most of the big stuff. This is a 2080 watt inverter, and let's get to it. Let's see what's in the box. DC to AC, it's an inverter. This is a big box. It came wrapped inside of another box, but let's see how well they packed this. All right, what do we get? Do we have everything that we need here to get going? We have a little box, and inside the little box is the remote control. That's gonna be fun to play with. We have some pretty beefy power wires. These are 2 AWG, 2 American wire gauge. These are pretty big beefy wires. Got all that copper in there. Doesn't indicate whether it is solid copper or not solid copper, but looks pretty good so far. This is a Cat 5e patch cable, which probably goes with the remote control. Get this box out of here. We have a user's manual. All right, there we go. No more box. Oh, before I get yelled at. There we go. That hardly made any noise. All right, this is the 2080 Ti model. Let's check the specs here real quick. They've got 3, the 1080, the 2080, which is this one, and the 3080, which is bigger than this one. This one is rated at 2080 watts. It has a surge power of over 6,000 watts. There's probably a short amount of time on that. This is so that you can start your motors like your air conditioners, and then they can settle down a bit and do their normal wattage. This has AC output of 100, 110, 120 volts AC. It is either 50 or 60 hertz. It is pure sine wave. Voltage switching is adjustable. Frequency switching between 50 and 60 hertz. Ah, okay, so it's switch setting 1 is 60 hertz, switch setting 2 is 50 hertz, switch setting 3 is 120 volts, 4 is 110 volts, and then if you set it to adjustable, switch setting 3 is 110 and switch setting 4 is 100 volts. All right, so I'm looking back at this section during the editing over here, and I don't like the way the manual is written here. The switch is a 2-lever, 2-position switch, which means I can have it in S1 or S2, and I can have it in S3 or S4. It's not a 4-position switch. I don't know that the reference sheet here is trying to tell you that it's a 4-position switch or not, but the way that they have it written out probably would have been served better if they put it into what we call a truth table in the electronics world. So it is my interpretation that I turn to switch 1 for 60 hertz, which is move the switch up to 60 hertz, or I move it down to switch 2 for 50 hertz. Great. In the United States, I want that at switch 1, S1, for 60 hertz. Now, that changes the parameters on the second switch. Because I'm at S1 60 hertz, then switch 3, 4, which again is an OR, 3 up, 4 down, is the position of the switch. I want it in position 3 for 120 volts. US is 60 hertz, 120 volts AC. Let's go take a look at that. Okay, so I have a multimeter plugged in, I have the inverter off, and I have the multimeter probes shoved into the electrical outlet. Don't do this unless you're really comfortable with electricity. I'm just gonna show you here how this is working. You can only move those switches when the inverter is off. It's currently off. Let's turn it on. All right, she comes on. The meter needs to figure out what's going on. That's overload, because I don't know. And then boom, 120 volts AC, 60 hertz. So that is S1 and S3. Now that I've got this thing set for 60 hertz 120 and I've tested it out that way, I'm going to turn it off. And we go to 0. And then over here, these stupid little switches, I'm going to switch the second one. Can't see that at all. Take my word for it. From S3 to S4. And then we come back over here and we turn it on. And the meter's trying to figure it out. There we go, 60 hertz, 111 volts, which is very close to 110. So that's how that works out. So that is S1 and S4. All right, we're going back to S1, S3, 60 hertz, 120 volts AC. Let's play with this a little bit and see how the heater likes it. Let's get our friend the fan back out here. This is straight fan mode. The voltage moves around a little bit. That's pretty normal. As long as it doesn't move around too wildly. If that thing went down from 120 to say 80, I'd be really worried. But from 120 to what it did, no problem. Now let's change it. Let's watch the meter. Let's change it to heat. Initial dip, and then she's handling it like a pro. And there is our meter showing 720 watts consumption. Let's go to high heat. Handled it pretty well. 1500 watts. Nice. DC voltage is 12 volts, 24 volts, or 48 volts. You've got under voltage protection, under voltage recovery, over voltage protection, over voltage recovery, output overload, restart to recover. Okay. Remove the load, remove the problem, turn it back on, turn it off and on again. Screw tabs here for mounting, so we'll get that mounted up. We have the battery terminals here on the back for your massive power cables, and you want to hook this directly to the battery that you're going to use. And when you do that, you might get a little bit of a spark. Don't be shocked, don't be alarmed. On the business side of things, we have AC output here. This is a GFI, which is really nice to have, and it supports up to 20 amps. That's that little dog leg on the connector. So if it does 20 amps, it'll also do 15 amps, like most people would want. USB socket here, 2.1 amps provided. These are those switches that you can do, and it's a S1, S2, either or an S3, S4, either or, but not both S1 and S2 because of the way the switch block is designed there. And then we have the remote for the RJ45 cable, the Cat5 Ethernet cable that they sent with it, and then there's your on, off, and standby. There is also a set of screw terminals back there which are part of the GFI circuit, and you have load, neutral, and ground. These terminals here are a little interesting to get off. First you have to unscrew the little plastic protection cap that is on there, which is a nice feature to have, and then they pop right off. I recommend you put these things here back on, both the black plastic cover and the screw down cap, so that you are fully protected, because there is going to be a lot of power potential at these terminals. We've got the negative wire hooked up here, we've got the positive wire hooked up here, we've got the negative wire hooked up to the inverter, and then we have our positive wire. Let's see if there's any release of spark. Just a little bit. And then we're good to go after that. We have our solar charge controller. We have 8-gauge wire coming from the solar panels up to the solar charge controller. We've got 12-gauge wires going to the battery right here. This is the Red Audio 12.8 volt, 140 amp hour battery. And the reason why we can do all of this different thing is because this is a different amount of power coming from the solar panels, and then this is converted to a different voltage and a different amperage going to the battery. And then we've got these big boy cables. These are those two AWG cables that I showed you before, and they are going from the battery terminals directly to the inverter. And if that stuff doesn't make any sense to you, do the physical installation yourself. Call an electrician to help you out with the wiring. You want to stay safe on this kind of stuff. This is my wall of awesome here, where I do all of my different testing out of inverters and charge controllers and other kinds of interesting electrical devices that RV enthusiasts like you and me might enjoy seeing. So I've got a little bit different of a setup than most people have. Again, you always want to have your inverter hooked directly to your battery. You don't want to connect it to your panel in the back of your RV. You don't want to connect it to the solar charge controller. The solar charge controller can't deliver enough power to light up that inverter. That's why it gets hooked up directly to the battery. Now that we've got it all plugged in, it's time to give her a test. Over here on the side, we have our on-off remote switch. I'm going to hit on. You heard it beep. The light went from red to green, which means it tested positive there. The GFI, can you guys see that? There it is. That has cycled through its first test and has tested positive and is lit up green. You heard the fans come on. Now it is time to plug in our first load. Plug that in there, and we've got a fan. All right, she passes. That's awesome. I'm just joking, but I did test out the USB port. Let's get a real AC load on this thing and see what it looks like. So now we get to do a full system test, and right here I have a battery monitoring app for the battery itself. Here I have everybody's favorite test tool. This is just a regular heater fan combination. So that is on fan mode, and you can see that we are drawing 17 watts out. 24 watts, 1.3 amps and 13.8 volts. Let's turn this from the fan setting to the low heat setting. You hear the fans kick in on the inverter, and we're pulling 500 watts out of the battery. 43 amps, 13.4 volts. Now we're going to go to the 2 setting, the high setting on the heater. And we're at 1200 watts, 1300 watts. And we're pulling about 90 amps out of the battery at 13 volts. Let's see what the solar thinks. 6.2 amps coming in from the solar panels. Nice. So now let's take a look at the remote. Over here on the side where all the business is, there is an RJ45 plug. I'm going to turn this off, and then I'm going to turn it to remote. This is the remote itself. It is meant to be mounted recessed into the wall, but I'm not going to do that for demonstration purposes. I'm just going to get it plugged in here. And on the back, you can see an RJ45 plug there as well. I'm going to take the Ethernet cable that they sent, which is about 15 feet, but you can get these cables in any length you want, I think up to 100 feet or so. There's a specification, but that's really not the point because this isn't even Ethernet. This is just serial data to go from the remote to the inverter. So if you wanted to mount this anywhere at all in the RV, you could do that. And then you could put this in your basement storage lockers or inside of a toolbox or something along those lines. But for now, let's take a look. Turn it on, and you can hear the inverter cycle up. And then this here is pretty neat. It is telling you 13.3 volts coming from the DC, 110 volts AC going out, and 0 watts going out, which is true because there's nothing plugged in. Let's do the USB fan again and see what it says about having that plugged in. Yeah, so it's not going to register DC watts. All right, now we've got the heater up here again, and let's plug it in. Let's take a look at the monitor when we turn it on. This is fan setting, 13 watts, 10 watts. This thing is reporting positive numbers coming in because we are charging from the solar panels. And let's see what happens when we're at 203.5, turn the fan on, and it goes down. Over here, 10 watts, 11 watts. So we should go up from 188, 180 to 200. And there's your efficiency. Okay, so we have that running at 10 watts. I'm gonna hit the off switch, and the fan immediately shuts off. Let's turn it back on. And it's going to turn on with a load. Yep, fan came on, and 11 watts out. Let's turn this up. There we go, and now it's telling me that the fan is on the inverter, and we're pulling 500 watts out. A nice little status display. So 600 to 615 watts. It should settle down a bit after the heater gets going and gets into play. Let's turn it off again. And the heater stopped and the fan stopped. And let's turn it on with a 500, 600 watt load on it. There we go. It took a couple of seconds for it to go from 0 to hero. Let's turn this up. And now we're pulling 1300 plus watts. We're still putting some in from the solar panels, but we're pulling out more than we're putting in. All right, we're gonna do the same thing. We're gonna do a hard shutdown. The fan is off. The battery is happy, and we're going to do a loaded start. And she started right up after just a little tiny bit of a delay, and the heater started up no problem. And now the big fan is gone. The unit is on, and you can see it's pulling about 260 watts out, and we've got this big extension cable plugged in to the inverter. That can only mean one thing. I've got the RV plugged into this thing. Let's see what we can do with this. Microwave. Let's go check. 1300 watts to run the microwave. Battery is handling it pretty good. Pulling almost 100 amps out. Solar's happy. Putting 14 amps back in. Is that what I saw? 13.8 amps back into the battery. Nice, nice. I don't know if you'll be able to hear that on camera, but I can hear the converter running here to charge the batteries on the tongue and keep the 12-volt systems happy. The two systems are not connected. The 12-volt batteries on the tongue are not connected to the battery that I'm running the inverter off of, which is powering the RV. While we're here, let me take this plug and let's plug it into the wall socket. And this is our friend Mr. Heater. That is fan only. There's one. I can hear the inverter kicking in the other room. Let's go take a look at that. All right, there we go. 870 watts to run the heater, 860 watts to run the heater. She's doing a good job. And there is your battery readout. Let's turn this to 2. 1450 some watts out. And then our battery is giving 108 amps and 1300 watts. And our solar is giving 10 amps. Nice. What do you think? Should we dare run the air? Oh, we dare. We definitely dare. Even though it's 75 degrees in here. All right, it's set to heat, off, auto, air conditioning, 76. Let's turn it down to 70 to get it to kick in. Oh, she came on. I was actually expecting more power draw. That's not bad at all. 560 watts to run the air conditioner. Oh, it cycled on the compressor and it didn't like it. The overload protection has kicked in. Okay. Off. Let me go turn the air conditioner off. So the thermostat was accessible because it's running off of the tongue batteries on the trailer. So I went ahead and turned that off. Let's turn the inverter back on. Right now the trailer is running on battery mode. Okay, on. Comes back in okay. And then the whole trailer cycles on, all the AC stuff. Excellent. Full recovery. So the operation was somewhat successful. Here's what happened. I got all excited. I was super excited that the AC wasn't pulling that much power, but it was pulling a lot of power. What it did was it came on with just the fan and got that running, and then it tried to kick in the compressor. And that guy just shut off because everything calmed down and we don't need a fan no more. Nice. Then it tried to kick in the compressor in the air conditioner, and that's when it tried to draw a ton of power. I don't know all of the ratings on that air conditioner, but it is certainly more than the inrush on the inverter. So a solution would be to get a soft start on the compressor, see if we can get that fixed. But that air conditioner is on the way out and a new air conditioner is on the way in. So be sure you're subscribed to see the install of that. I'm actually going to install 2 air conditioners at once. One of them is going to be 12 volts, one of them is going to be 120 volts. So that's going to be interesting. And then in a video after that, I'm going to install 2 120 volt air conditioners. So lots of stuff coming up here for tech reviews. Right now, this system isn't strong enough to run the air conditioner on the roof by itself. But this is an RV and we're in Arizona and it's 65 degrees outside. So we don't need an air conditioner right now. Just open the windows. Let me show you what kind of sun we're working with because this is a weird weather day anyway. So it appears to be overcast. It's actually raining right now. And then we actually have a decent amount of sun. It's been off and on all day. Do you have any questions about how inverters work, about how this system works, about how to plug this thing in? There will be more inverter reviews on the channel coming up, so leave some questions down here and I will reply in the comments, and I will also address them in a future video. We are moving in a couple of days, so what I'm gonna do at the next campsite is I am not gonna plug in at all. If you are thinking about boondocking or going off-grid, go to a campsite that has plug-ins and don't plug in. See how long it takes for your tanks to fill up while you have a hookup to empty them out. Start writing these numbers down and then you will know how long you can go. Because you really don't want to have a fully empty freshwater tank and a fully filled gray water tank and no ability to dump and nothing to drink for the next day or so until you figure all your, like, where do I go to dump this stuff out? Where do I go to fill my water stuff out? Best to do it when you've got a nice safety net here, and then once you know what you're doing, get on out to the middle of nowhere. And a new camper coming in. We'll wait till he goes by. As always, I got you covered with links in the description down below for more information on any of the things that I have demoed here in the video today. That was some of the basics on getting it installed. I am going to move to the next campsite. Like I said, I'm going to get this thing plugged in only to battery power and solar power and see how long we can last. Be sure you're subscribed to see that video when it comes out next week. Until then, there's a video right over here I think you'll enjoy next. I'll see you over there.